fried. Neurons here. Um, a patron asked me to do that, and to be honest, I don't blame him. I'm having so much fun. This is my second take of doing that, and the first one was fine. I'll probably use that one, but I just wanted to record this because I didn't say that enough. Anyway, fun episode for you guys, and I just wanted to say, hey, deep fried Neurons here before I cue the fucking. I'm actually pretty scatterbrained about where to start this episode because there's so much information that we have to cover that is not related to each other at all. Not necessarily because it is actually important for the grand narrative, is just because this is kind of a scatterbrain episode. It's also 4 in the morning, by the way. That's the kind of episode that we're doing today. For new listeners of the podcast, please bear with the exposition. For the old listeners, you know how it is. This was a phase in the middle of the podcast, somewhere in around episode 35, which would be exactly halfway away from the life of this podcast. But that's where we are right now, and the reason I'm making this episode is because I have a genuine problem of obsessing over information or acquiring it, specifically the kind that other people do not remember and do not bring up in regular social conversation. You know the memes about it. You've all shared it, and I'm pretty sure you have the same tendencies as just mine manifest in my dreams sometime. And actually, now that I think about it, that's the root point that sort of started this entire podcast's journey, like the writing of this podcast episode's journey. So I'll just tell you about the dream. It's not all that peculiar, to be honest. It's about a murder story that doesn't exist. That is being told to somebody that I know. So basically, the dream starts with me and my friend who go out every day from college to get lunch because we have about an hour off and we refuse to accept the mediocrity of canteen food. So from time to time, both of us will sit in his car and we'll go out. He's worked before and also he's privileged enough to afford that. So um, we sort of go out and listen to music in the car and then get whatever food we do. So like the audio is happening, and in the middle of the lunch that we're getting, he's letting me know that he's got a date, which is extremely peculiar because this is not a person who's extremely interested in dating at this point in their lives, which is great, good for them. And he says the date is in 5 minutes and it will be over by the time my lunch is finished because I'm the slow eater usually. So he goes over to the person he's dating, and it's a lady. I don't remember her face because you can't assign a face that you've never seen to a person that you don't identify. But an imaginary person is possible. So I don't have a face for this person, but definitely I know that this was a lady. She was dressed as one and, well, resembled one anyway. So they're chit chatting, they're talking about tigers, catching tigers, and some kind of cannibalism among animals. Not important to the story. After which she sort of asks my dude the opinion about a murder case that has been sensationalized across the country. And the case is sort of extremely well talked about, and it starts really bothering my friend. Uh, Not to say that he's in person the kind of person that gets his stomach turned because of violence. He is actually pretty decent handling stories about violence. But in this case, he really didn't want to talk about it. But this lady kept insisting, dispassionately trying to like find out more or discuss about it, like in an urban legend kind of way. And I don't really blame her, because if I had the chance, I'd discuss this case with anybody I got if it was real. Luckily, for my sanity, it's not. Uh, Basically, it was called the Munamar Apartment Murders. Remember, this is all fictional. That this is not real. This is what she said, though. Munamar Apartment Murders. Basically, what happens is a group of students that lives in a neighboring society sort of crossed the street and entered into the residential society where flat owning families live, and they murder like a group a family of 9, 5 of which are murdered, 6 of which are murdered, and 3 of them are made to watch. All 3 of them are minors, so those are the ones which will be sort of saved from this ordeal. And throughout the case, she's just trying to get the details out before like my dude has time to change the topic. And she tells him and the rest of the restaurant about, well, because the rest of the restaurant has to listen, this is the focus of the story now. She tells us about how these kids entered the house, about 4 or 5 of them, all of them bachelors, all of them living in a neighboring society, in a place where student residence is pretty popular, and they have been getting complaints from the families for a very long time. Not that this is a war zone between the two parties, but for some reason something just snaps, and these students, while having fun and games, just entered the house and they killed all the adults in the family, and afterwards proceeded to separate um, the bodies into half, like from waist down and waist up. And they proceeded to play some sort of twisted game of tic tac toe with the bodies while the children were watching. And to record who won and how the games went, they sewed the bodies together, and the police walked in after the neighbor did not show up for a morning walk or something like that, and that's why the entire arrest happened and things like that. But a lot of this was actually unconfirmed because it was an ongoing investigation, so people were just speculating. So she was just wondering if this dream, like this entire story, was actually real, or has it captured somebody's imagination, because the murders happened in a complete uncertainty and surprised everybody, and because there is very little information available for it, are people just assigning information to it. And in the meanwhile, everybody in the restaurant gets a notification, quite random, isn't it? All of us have the same um, news app, as it would happen in a dream, actually. So basically everybody gets the thing, and it confirms that these murders happen as the urban legends are telling, and that's all real, that the entire cutting off bodies and sewing them back together actually happened. And then my dude walked away from the table, and I woke up, and that's all that happened. And I remember all of this in this great detail because I actually journaled all of it right after I woke up. I bothered two of my friends with it. I'm so sorry, guys. um, and after that, I refused to go down a rabbit hole because I was certain that I'm gonna lose my mind eventually about all of this. So I'm just gonna tell you the parts that I recognized in the back of my brain are the pieces of information I'm joining together to make this story. And it's just brilliant how your brain sort of stores and reinterprets and remembers these pieces of information that you thought you've completely forgotten about. But I remember them consciously now because I thought about this for about 2 days, sometimes involuntarily. So the first and foremost is, of course, the element of families being murdered. If you don't know, the most successful episode on YouTube from this podcast is Joshi Abhyankar Murders, which was episode 17, if I'm not wrong. And well, you gotta go listen to that podcast if you wanna know more. There's actually a movie about it as well. I think it's called Mafisa Sakshidar with Nana Patekar in it. Quite old and not all that good. If I'm being honest, it gets boring in the middle. So that's a theme that's continued across like this entire murder. Another one, of course, is the family murders from Adelaide, Australia, in the 1980s. These 4 or 3 young men who were extremely interested in sexual abuse of teenage boys. So they used to murder their families and abuse them, and then bail, and they had this serial thing about them. Not to say that they're rare by themselves when it comes to like families being victims is always the case. Families altogether being the murderer is also a case. In 1857, somewhere in Tennessee or Albuquerque, something like that. Um, there was a family, Bonnie and Herb were the first names of the people. I don't remember the last names of the people who who used to run a tavern and a guest house of sorts where they used to let people sit and they sleep while they were traveling, and they used to murder these people and well take their wealth. Turns out that most of the people who used to avail their services were not very rich, so they just used to do it for fun, is the assumption. There was a trap door on the guest head table in the morning, and the two Clyde men, the teenage boy and the husband, would hide in the curtains, who would be very visible from behind the curtains, and the gentleman would be served breakfast in an eerie location with a insistent vibe on sitting on the chair, and after that the trapdoor would open, which would lead them to the basement. And if the trapdoor failed, the two Clyde men would like jump the victim with knives and like slit their throat and throw them in the basement anyway. Of course, very similar to Sweeney Todd. And well, besides the pies being made, of course, the other one of this institution turned into thing is H. Holmes and his murder hotel, and how he used to murder people. How he built a hotel altogether to sneak into people's houses and kill them. And then of course he got caught and he confessed to killing what, 50, 60 people, something like that. And all of this information sort of made this concoction in my brain to like just formulate a random ball that rolled over into a dream, along with of course the other parts, which is house invasion and murder, which of course one of them, the most famous one, is Charles Manson and the case of Sharon Tate's murder along with her friends. If you don't know about it, I genuinely have difficulty believing you don't know about it, because the Quentin Tarantino movie that just came out, the one that most people hated and got an Oscar anyway, that's the one. It sort of had this as a basis. Like, this is the night that he was building up to. This was the revisionist thing that he was doing throughout the movie. Along with that, of course, there's other murders that I am certain that were playing in the back of my mind as this story was being formulated in the front of my brain while I was sleeping. One of which happens to be Mr. Raja. I don't remember his first name. Starts with a C. Cadell Calvin, something like that. A gentleman from Trivandrum who killed all of his family, about 5 members, in a satanic ritual and mixed their blood in a machete, which he then went on to use in the satanic ritual. And the reason this case was sensational is not just because satanic rituals were involved, but also because it was, I think, 3 doors away from the chief minister's house. And this gentleman managed to do all of this, and the only reason police ever caught him is because he confessed or something like that. And why am I telling you all of this information beyond the dream itself? It's because, well, one is I want to document how the human brain can work if it really wants to work, if it wants to formulate stories, if it refuses to rest. And the second is that how much documentation and fascination we do about macabre killing, just all moments in human history that are completely void of humanity are sort of documented, and in some certains even glorified, where people are nicknamed along with, for incidents to remember. For Valentine's Day Massacre, the songs written about it. I think Talking Heads did a song called Psycho Killer in the 1970s, which is one of my favorite songs actually, which sort of intertwines pop culture with serial killers quite a lot. I think Moors have another one about a couple that used to kill children together. That was their bonding activity. And which is why I sort of moved away from just making this a true crime podcast. I didn't want to be just one of those places to document points of devoid human history. I mean, not to say that I talk about all positive shit. It's just, stories that are weird that I talk about, and of course, murder is involved in quite a few of them. Yeah, I just thought a good segue into a bunch of murders to be discussed, because Panda Love just left a comment on my most popular video that he wants to hear more about serial killers and things like that. So I thought one video would be nice. And second, I generally like to think about why is there so much fascination with the macabre uh, in my brain, or in the human society in general. Not to say that we shouldn't record these, because of course we should know about what has happened before and what is possible. It is not nice to not know something or not have recorded something. I am completely for documenting serial killers. It's just the way we think about them in pop culture is a little bit glorifying, which is not the best thing in the world. Not to say that you should change your content in any way. Just curious what it says about the popularity of these shows is all. And of course, would be happy to do a more different take on serial killers and killers in general. But till then, we will be talking about macabre. That's the theme of the month. Hope you enjoyed a random burst of information. And if the case that came to my dreams is a rabbit hole that you intend to go down on, good luck. You have no personal baggage there. But I think it would be extremely exhausting for me to do that. So I am gonna refrain, is what I'm trying to tell you, of looking further into this dream. I do believe that it's just a random information crystallizing into a weird story, which I will have fun telling for the rest of my days. But till then, it's just episode 73 of the Deep Fried Neurons podcast. And I hope you're taking care. I hope you're following social distancing. I know it's been 2 months since we've been locked inside the houses. But I do urge you to take this seriously. A global pandemic of this magnitude hasn't happened in a while. And hope you take care, drink a lot of water, and like, share, subscribe. If you think the content is worth it, please consider supporting us on Patreon. I mean, supporting me on Patreon is just me in this entire thing. And yeah, have a nice day.